I'm Shauna Nyros, and welcome to another episode of the Wealthy Podcast. Today's episode may very well change your life. We are talking with Dr. Ron Cridland, who is a sleep doctor. He started out as a medical doctor, and through the scope of his practice, discovered that there was one key element to health that was missing for a lot of his patients. Today, you're going to hear about his journey, about how you can improve your sleep, and how sleep is that missing link to all things health. Well, welcome back, everyone. I am Shauna Nyros, and this is the Wealthy Podcast. And today, I'm super excited to welcome Dr. Ron Cridland. And Dr. Ron Cridland is what I would like to call a sleep doctor. Is that okay? Can I call you that?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, the sleep doctor. I'm super excited to have you here today, Dr. Cridland. Can I call you Ron?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, because sleep has, for me, been kind of one of the big awarenesses in the last couple of years as I get older, how important sleep is. And I've really been trying to work on my own sleep hygiene.
Good for you.
Thanks. And so when we started dreaming up, the Wealthy Podcast and what kind of guests we wanted to have on the Wealthy Podcast, and being mindful that what we're really trying to talk about is that health is wealth, I was like, we need to have a sleep doctor. And so I'm so happy that you're here.
Well, thanks very much for having me.
Your bio is pretty impressive. I could prattle it off. It's written here very nicely for me, but maybe you can tell me, how did you get here?
Well, that's a good question. I have to thank my mom, who instilled the idea of me becoming a doctor. But when I was a teenager, my mom got very sick, and she began to look around for help. And she wasn't getting the help from the medical profession. And she came across an organization called the Canadian Natural Hygiene Society, which are basically a group of health advocates advocating a vegan, vegetarian diet. And so she went to a couple of their practitioners, and we became vegan overnight when I was 18 years old.
Really?
Yes.
Our whole family. It was cool to be vegan.
Yeah, before. And, it was ironic because we just bought a side of beef and put it in our freezer that summer. And then in the fall, we became vegan. And at Christmas, we gave away to our friends, and we felt guilty about it. So so at that time, I was learning about health, and we went to lots of lectures and conferences about health. And even though I was already interested in becoming a physician, I realized even more that I needed to go to medical school, because a lot of the doctors at that time were naturopaths and osteopaths, and they're getting arrested for practicing medicine without a license because they were making people well and they're making the doctors look bad.
Right. So the doctors, the physicians or doctors, medical professionals that were practicing health promotion were sort of ostracized. Yes.
And so I wanted to go to medical school. I wanted to learn what the doctors learned from the horse's mouth. So the people who wrote the book on anatomy and physiology and biochemistry. I've always liked to understand how things work. And so I figured if I could understand how things work, then I could fix it. So I do that. I fix my kids' toys. I fix my car. I'm always fixing things. My desk is covered with things to be fixed that my family brings me. So that's how I've always looked at things. And I was very thankful to be able to go to medical school at the University of Toronto, which was a lot of the people who wrote the textbooks worked and taught us. And I wanted to know what the doctors knew, but I also wanted to know what they didn't know. And I remember in second year, we were going to take a course called prevention and biostatistics. I thought that's kind of odd to have combined those two things together, but I'm interested because I wanted to do prevention. But it really was more about statistics and immunization, and their thought of prevention was immunization. And so anyways, I got my medical license, and then I kind of traveled around the world, working with different practitioners, observing what they did and how they did it. And then I came back and started my health promotion practice. So I was a family physician practicing health promotion, seeing everything a family physician would see, but approaching it from a lifestyle point of view. So teaching people how to get well. I didn't deliver babies, but I did everything else. And after a while, I began to realize that I had a lot of patients following very healthy lifestyles who still weren't feeling well, despite all the effort they were making. And it turned out that sleep was the missing link. And I became aware of a couple of different articles. One was by a fellow by the name of Harvey Moldavsky, who wrote an article about what was then called fibrositis, which we now call fibromyalgia. And he was a medical doctor from one of the hospitals in Toronto. And he discovered that people with fibrositis had an abnormality of their sleep. They had a deficiency of stage 4 sleep, which is your deepest, most restorative sleep. And the abnormality was what we called alpha delta sleep. So normally alpha wave is a relaxed type waking brainwave. It's not supposed to be present to any significant degree in deep sleep. And he found that these people had a lot of it. And so he thought, well, there must be something going on here. And so then he took healthy volunteers and he monitored their sleep, monitored their brainwaves. And whenever they went into stage 4 sleep, he played an 80 decibel tone that brought them out of that level of sleep. Not enough to wake them up, but enough to prevent them from getting any amount of that sleep. And within 3 days, they all developed the symptoms of fibrositis.
Wow.
They all developed sore, tender tissues, fatigue, and reduced mood. And then he stopped interfering with their sleep. And the first night, they spent twice as much time in stage 4 sleep. The second night, they spent about 50% more than normal time in REM. And by the third day, they were all better. So I thought, this is phenomenal. And this was written in a journal back in the 70s. And I was discovering this in 1988. And then I thought, okay, what's going on in stage 4 sleep? And then I came across an article by a neurologist by the name of John Sasson, who found out that growth hormone is released predominantly during stage 4 sleep. And growth hormone is one of our anabolic hormones. Looking into it further, I discovered that testosterone, which is also an anabolic hormone, is released predominantly during stage 4 sleep. Erythropoietin, a hormone that stimulates our body to build up red blood cells, is released predominantly during stage 4 sleep. So, and if you have a deficiency of stage 4 sleep, you have a deficiency of these hormones, especially in males, not as much in females, but especially in males. And so I thought, there's something very important going on here. So I started incorporating this information into my practice. And, if somebody was, feeling tired or sick, I would tell them, don't get up an hour earlier to exercise or to meditate if you're sick or you're tired. You need your sleep to heal. And then again, to realize that there were patients who wanted to sleep but couldn't because they had some form of insomnia, or people who were sleeping but still not feeling rested because there was something else wrong with their sleep. So then I got interested in sleep disorders. And by this time, I'd been practicing for a few years, and I had an opportunity to move to California to work with a colleague of mine that I had met with the Hygiene Society. And he and I both had trained in Australia in the use of diet and lifestyle and therapeutic fasting. And so I came and joined him. He was a chiropractor, and I was the medical director of one of the largest chiropractic practices in Northern California. And when I was down there, I had to come back for business. And when I came back, I stayed with one of my patients' families. One of my first patients in my practice, I had stayed with them. They were friends at this point. And when I came back to California, there was an article on my desk about how people with sleep apnea were more prone to developing seizures. So it lowered, having uncontrolled sleep apnea lowered their seizure threshold. And as soon as I read that article, I remember sleeping at my friend's house. Her daughter in her early 20s was developmentally disabled. and tired and sleepy all the time. And we always blamed it on the medication she took for her epilepsy. And but I remember distinctly hearing her snoring, and then pauses, and then snorting and gasping. And I didn't really think anything of it. And I was interested in sleep. I knew about sleep apnea, and I'd seen her as a patient, and it never occurred to me to think about what she might have a sleep disorder. But as soon as I read that article, I picked up the phone. I called her mom. And I said, I think Susan has sleep apnea. And I explained it to her. We could edit this out, right?
No, we don't want to. This is the good stuff.
Well, anyways, I called her mom and I said, I think Suzanne has sleep apnea. And so she had her tested, and sure enough, she had very severe sleep apnea.
Mm-hmm.
And she went on CPAP, and she was a different girl. Prior to that, she required a lot of care. After that, she was able to live independently and completely changed her life. And so,
So did the seizures stop, or did they diminish?
No, but her fatigue and her sleepiness went away. Yeah. And I believe her seizures became much better controlled because she was having them quite regularly.
Quality of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So later on, when I went to California, or in California, I noticed that the person who wrote that article, John Sasson, was practicing in my neighborhood.
Ooh.
So the who wrote the article on the association between sleep and growth hormone. So I discovered this article in '88. I had moved to California in '92, I think, and so I went and called up the local sleep lab and asked if I could go to their rounds. And so I started going to their rounds, and after a couple of years, they invited me to come to their regular clinic. And a year or two later, I was scoring their sleep studies when their lab manager went on disability for a few months.
That's cool.
So I really learned a lot about sleep, and he sponsored my my application to the American Academy of Sleep Medicine to become board certified in sleep medicine, and I passed the exams and became a sleep doctor. And then I moved to Calgary and started practicing sleep medicine full time, and then that was in '98, and then in 2000 we moved to Kelowna, and I started a sleep medicine practice there.
You have a number of clinics now.
Yes. So it was interesting. I opened up my practice. I sent out a fax to all the doctors in the interior region. And the next day I was busy. But ironically, even though I was as busy as possibly could be, I couldn't make a living working as a specialist and being paid as a GP. And I didn't have a lab. The hospital, Dr. Barry Jones at that time was a neurologist running the sleep lab. He was very welcoming, and he allowed me to refer my patients. And he actually allowed me to book a week a month for my patients, so I could coordinate visits from people coming from Prince George. They would come down, have a consult, have a sleep study that night. They would get the study scored and sent to me the next morning, and I'd go over the results the next morning before they went back to up north.
Was that here?
That was here at the Kelowna General Hospital.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was very, very welcoming, and but I didn't get paid to interpret those studies. I just kind of reinterpreted them for the sake of my patients, and after a year, I was like $75,000 in the hole, and I got invited to go back to Calgary. So I commuted to Calgary for 3 years. But a month after I started my practice, the government released a moratorium on setting up new sleep labs. And so we applied, They had taken 5 years to discover that they needed more sleep labs, doing all their stuff that they do at whatever committees they do. And then it took 3 months to look at the application, and they took one look at it and they decided, we don't have the criteria to decide who gets new sleep labs. So it took them another 3.5 years to come up with the criteria, which was a very simple 2-line item. If you have less than the provincial average of beds and more than a 6-month waiting list, you deserve a sleep lab. It took them 3.5 years to cover. That's the government for you. But anyways, we were awarded the first publicly funded private sleep lab in BC, in fact, in Western Canada, west of Ontario.
Amazing.
And in Kelowna here. And then we were awarded the second one in Nanaimo a couple of years later. And then we set up the one in Vernon in 2018. And then more recently, we've been set up a few more. Kamloops, Langley, we're building one in Victoria and Burnaby as well too. So we're taking our brand of sleep medicine on the road to the Lower Mainland.
Well, congratulations. But I suppose that's kind of telling about where we're at as a society in terms of our sleep. And, I've read that there's kind of like this global sleep loss epidemic, probably stemming from a whole lot of things. But why, in your opinion, your expert opinion and your experience with all your patients, why are people suffering and struggling so much with their sleep now?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think there's multiple reasons. I think, it's ironic that half the population suffer from sleep disorders at least 3 nights a week in any given year. So this is epidemic.
Yeah. So unpack that.
It's more common than COVID.
What characterizes a sleep disorder?
Well, for some people, it's having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep or getting enough sleep or feeling rested. There's actually, in the International Classification of Sleep Disorders, 3rd edition, there are 65 sleep disorders and 9 normal variants. So there's like 74 different conditions that can affect people's sleep. When you boil it right down to different, like really clinically different conditions, there's 32 different clinical conditions. So there's a lot of different things that can affect sleep. And unfortunately, we learned nothing about this in medical school. I certainly didn't. At UBC, I think they have 4 hours of sleep disorder. But part of that is using, case studies. Okay, this patient comes in with chest pain, and somewhere in that case study, we talk about sleep apnea. But we're not learning really how to diagnose it or treat it or problem solve it or the different options for treating sleep apnea. We're just learning that it exists. And I knew it exists, and I still didn't think about it when I saw my patients. All right, so you need to do a lot more than just mention that it exists.
So you just gave a stat there. What did you say? 40%?
50%.
50%. Yeah. So
and it's even worse. It's even worse in patients who see a family physician. 69% of patients who see a family physician have an underlying sleep disorder contributing to the condition they're seeing the physician for. So contributing to their high blood pressure, their diabetes, their heart disease, their depression, their anxiety, their obesity, not to mention their fatigue. And when we see the patient for fatigue, we'll check their thyroid, we'll check their hemoglobin, we'll check their blood sugar, and we won't even think to ask them about their sleep. That should be the first question. When somebody's tired or somebody's sleepy, the first question should be, how's your sleep? So it's interesting, in my practice, this became, one of the first questions I would ask people. And I would ask people, so how's your energy? And 99% of the patients who came to see me would say, low. And I would say, how much sleep are you getting? That was my second question. And they would say, enough. Like 99% of the time, they would say, enough. So how many hours is that exactly? Oh, 6 or 7. Isn't that enough? Well, not if you're tired. And it was just strange that people thought that if they're getting 6 or 7 hours of sleep, that should be enough. And they never clued into that might have something to do with why they're tired. It's like if you're thirsty and you've had your 8 glasses of water today, you're going to have another glass of water. Maybe it's because you ate a bag of salted potato chips, but you're still going to drink. You know to do that. If you're hungry, you know to eat. If you're cold, you know to warm up. If you're hot, you know to cool down. But if you're tired, people don't seem to know what to do other than have another cup of coffee.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of like what I'm curious about is, my husband is like, should probably be a patient of yours. He works a lot and doesn't sleep enough. He always like, oh my gosh, he's gonna kill me for this, but like he'll fall asleep on the couch after dinner, or on a Saturday afternoon after the chores are done. But he hates like I think there's like this productivity thing.
To stay up late.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, like there's that, but I also just think that like societally we've created these like, I don't know, shame rules around sleeping or napping, or like you're lazy if you sleep too much or whatever, right? And that it's better to just work and be productive.
I think there's a lot of societal factors. I think, like in business, people wear it as a badge of courage. Well, I get by on 5 hours of sleep. I'm so tough. Yeah. Look at all the things that I accomplished.
I don't sleep.
All these famous people who get by on not a lot of sleep, but they also nap during the day. And so there's lots of other things going on.
And we can get to this, but I've learned that if you are chronically sleep deprived, there's all sorts of things downstream.
And we should get into that. But just, back to people like your husband, a lot of people think that if I have no trouble falling asleep, I can fall asleep at the blink of an eye, anywhere, anytime. They think they're a champion sleeper. But what they don't realize is the reason why they're a champion sleeper is because they're excessively sleepy. And they're excessively sleepy because there's something wrong with their sleep. And it never occurs to them that might be the case. And the reason why is because when you're asleep, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what's happening to you when you're asleep because you're asleep. And so, and when, as a physician, when we're examining people or diagnosing people or testing people, we're testing them when they're awake. We never test them when they're asleep. So we're missing a third of their lives. And when we take a history, we're missing a third of their lives in their history about what's going on in their sleep. And of course, patients don't know a lot about what's going on in their sleep, only what their bed partner tells them. And their bed partner doesn't know anything because they don't believe it, because they're not aware of it consciously. If their bed partner tells them they snore and gasp and choke, oh no, I can't be doing that. I'm not aware of waking myself up, not breathing and stuff like that.
As a bed partner, somebody that gasps and chokes and all of that.
It's hard for them to believe. Yeah. And so when we do a sleep study, we will show the patient, or at least before COVID, we would show the patient their sleep study, because I want them to see themselves choking, gasping, snorting, and 30-second long pauses, and their oxygen dropping way down, and then snorting, gasping, choking again, to not to scare them, but so that they understand that this is real. This is really what's going on with you. And this is something that's important to treat it. And you're right, when people are sleep deprived, there is a consequence of that. Even if you function fine, even if you think you function fine, a lot of people don't know how good they could function if they got enough sleep.
Exactly, yeah.
So when you are sleep deprived and you have to push yourself to get going in the morning. I mean, you may be a morning person and it's not that hard to push you, but you're living on adrenaline. If it wasn't for adrenaline, you'd be asleep right at this very moment. Okay, and so the higher levels of adrenaline or fight or flight system, it affects your whole body. So it raises your blood pressure. It speeds up your heart rate. It raises your blood sugar. Okay. So people who get less than 7 hours of sleep are between 25 and 50% more likely to develop hypertension over time. Not immediately, but over decades. They're going to have a harder time controlling their blood sugar. It slows your metabolism down. We can take a healthy volunteer and restrict their sleep to 4 hours a night for a week and create a pre-diabetic state in just a week.
Wow.
Okay. So, and if you look at diabetics on average, they get 2 hours less sleep than they would like to get. They're aware that they're getting less sleep if you poll them. On average, they're getting about 6 hours of sleep, when science tells us we need somewhere between 7 and 9 to be well. People say, well, I'm getting 7, therefore I'm normal. No, you're not. Okay, because statistically, the bell curve shows that half the population needs 8 or more hours of sleep. So just because you're getting 7 doesn't mean that's normal for you. Okay, it's like saying the range of hemoglobin is 12 to 16 and you're 12.1. Is that normal for you? Your normal may be 14. Okay, and just because it's in the normal range doesn't mean that's normal for you. And again, what is the normal range? back when I first started practicing, the normal range for cholesterol killed half the population with heart disease. That normal range was based on average, not normal. Now they've since revised that, and we have a much better idea what's normal.
Yeah.
It's like if you're seeing a doctor and they haven't been trained in something, they compare you to them. So it's like the definition of an alcoholic is somebody who drinks more than their doctor. Okay. So in medical school, because we learn nothing about sleep, then how do we evaluate a patient if we don't know anything about it? We compare it to what we know. Okay. I've had patients referred to us for narcolepsy. This patient was late because her mother had an accident with her car on the way to the visit. This guy was 18 years old, and he had narcolepsy, and his doctor told him, just drink more caffeine. Just drink more coffee. That's what I do. And interesting, it turned out his mother fell asleep at the wheel. She had narcolepsy too, because it's a genetic condition, but she was in her 50s and had never been picked up because this patient had to demand to come and see us. But doctors never clued in on it.
And that's like, I mean, I don't know a ton about narcolepsy, but that's a very sort of obvious sleep disorder, like sleep disorder. You know what I mean? But there are so many other, like you just mentioned, high blood pressure, the metabolic effect of not getting enough sleep that you wouldn't necessarily no, you're not falling asleep in your car, but it's still having this impact on your overall health, like significant impact, but it's insidious, right?
It's, people grow up with it or they learn to live with it. So they call it normal, but they don't even know what normal is. So like I've defended 2 truckers who killed people with their vehicles by falling asleep at the wheel. And they were referred to me by their lawyer, and it turned out they had severe sleep apnea. And we treated their sleep apnea to say, oh, wow, I had no idea. I thought this was just normal. This is normal part of trucking or normal part of my job or normal with my age. And when we treated them, they said, I had no idea that this was the way I was supposed to feel, because this condition had crept up on them over a lifetime, and they just called it normal.
I'm so curious because you mentioned sort of like optimal range is 7 to 9, but that's so variable based on person to person, right? One of the things that I've come to understand about stats is like that's sort of population based, but at the end of the day, when we're talking about health, we're still talking about one person.
Yes.
A person.
So how does that apply to me?
Yeah. So like when I have this watch thing, lots of people wear these things now. I have a watch and it's like hooked up to an app that I have on my phone. And so I wear the watch at night, and then when I get up in the morning, I'm able to see some stuff, some data on my sleep. And what has been so eye-opening for me, like you mentioned, that there's different phases of sleep, right? So I could be in bed for 9 hours sleeping, quote unquote, but I can wake up in the morning and look at my data, and I haven't had any deep sleep.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Am I good? Am I good? Okay, well, I got 9 hours, but does the quality of your sleep matter?
Of course it does. And just a comment about wearables and how accurate they are.
Wear it.
Absolutely.
Love it.
You can wear it. The thing is that in order to measure sleep, you need to measure brain waves. Okay, and we're not measuring brain waves. Okay, with this
Heart.
No, we're measuring movement.
Oh, okay.
And we're using algorithms to convert a signal from movement as a correlation to certain stages of sleep. But it's a stretch. Okay, so certain kind of movement is associated with stage 1, and certain kind of movement associated with stage, core, and certain movement associated with deep sleep, and certain movement associated with REM sleep. And the correlations are about 80%. They're nowhere near 100%. Okay, and they're worse in people who have sleep disorders. Okay, they're much less correlated because they may be moving for other reasons, like waking up to breathe or twitching or sleep talking or something like that. So the actual accuracy of these things goes down in people who have sleep disorders. So take it with a grain of salt.
But it's better than nothing?
It is interesting, and it is comparable from one night to the next in that individual. And the next time you have a sleep study, wear your watch so we can actually compare to what the real data is. Okay, and that's what I tell my patients. Let's see how close it comes. It is interesting, and there is a use for it. But I have patients come in and we ask them to fill out their sleep questionnaire. And how many times did you wake up last night? Oh, my watch said 18 times, but I don't remember 2. Well, we're only interested in the ones you remember, because those are the ones that really affect you, and the other ones may be related to your underlying sleep disorder.
Yeah, and I guess the point is like, if your sleep is disturbed, you're not getting that REM sleep that you talk about, or like the deep sleep.
Okay, let's talk about REM sleep and deep sleep, because even Sleep Country says you want to get your good REM sleep to be rested the next day, and REM doesn't make you rested.
Okay, what does REM do?
REM is where you do your vivid dreaming.
Oh.
Okay, this is a particular bugbear with me. Okay. People come in and say, I want to get my good REM sleep. Well, okay, I can deprive you of REM sleep, and the thing it's going to probably have is have an antidepressant effect on you. They've actually done research where if you give somebody an antidepressant, it takes about 3 to 6 weeks for the antidepressant effect to kick in. If you give somebody an antidepressant, it also suppresses your REM sleep, by the way. And if you take somebody and monitor their sleep and prevent them from getting any REM sleep by playing that 80 decibel toner in the ear for 3 weeks, you have an antidepressant effect. Okay. You also may affect learning, memory, and stuff like that, but it doesn't make you not feel rested. It's your deep sleep, the stage 3 and 4 sleep that is where most of your major healing hormones are being released, and your most restorative sleep.
Yeah, what's happening in that? Because I think that's the thing that I've noticed the most, even with my not optimal wearable. It's giving me an indication that there are certain things, lifestyle things that I can adjust to impact what is being measured as deep sleep. And I've come to realize that I want more of that deep sleep, because that's where the good stuff happens. So what's going on?
So let me tell you a little bit of my evolution on that topic, because when I first discovered deep sleep and the hormones, the anabolic hormones that were being released, and the importance of deep sleep, I thought, well, I want everybody to get more deep sleep. And when I practiced in California and worked with John Sasson, who discovered that growth hormones released predominantly during deep sleep, he kind of reminded me that what you really want is normal sleep. Okay, that you can't increase one sleep over the other necessarily. You just want to normalize your sleep and to feel rested. And it doesn't really matter to you, because you don't know what your brainwaves are doing. You don't really know what percentage is deep and what percentage is REM, and so on and so forth. What you do know is how you feel the next day. And whatever you do to help your insomnia or help you sleep better is going to help deepen your sleep as well. So don't worry about that. What you want is normal sleep, and you want restorative sleep. In fact, I'll see patients with insomnia come into the lab who don't feel rested, and they have normal amounts of deep sleep. So, and then I'll see other people who feel rested and don't have normal amounts of deep sleep. And so I've come to understand that our division of deep sleep and different stages of sleep is arbitrary. Rex Chaffin and Kales back in the 50s, just looked at sleep and looked at the brainwaves and said, well, we can organize sleep based on these particular brainwaves, and these particular stages of sleep are associated with certain things, but there's a lot more that we don't know. Okay, and so it's how we hang our hat right now, but don't get all caught up in it, because it by itself it doesn't make a big difference. What makes a big difference is how you feel when you wake up in the morning.
So I imagine that given the fact that there's half of us are struggling in some aspects with our sleep.
And even those who don't necessarily have insomnia per se, 60% of the population get less than 8 hours of sleep.
What, why do we need to sleep? Like it would just be, you know what I mean? Like why, what is a, anthropological or evolutionary reason why we need to sleep?
Well, I think the full answer is still out on that. We don't really know. We do know that if we deprive people of sleep, we get lots of problems. But so in order to prevent those problems, then we need to get sleep. But what is really going on in sleep? We do know that healing is going on in sleep. That's when we recover from day-to-day wear and tear. We do know that our body is cleaning things out. There is a waste product in neurons called tau protein. And then when it builds up, it's associated, we see this in high levels in people who die of Alzheimer's disease, right? And we know that this protein is being removed from the brain cells during sleep. And we know that insomniacs are more prone to developing Alzheimer's and dementia. So, you connect the dots here, okay? It's kind of also funny that, people are worried about taking a sleeping pill like Zopiclone. Well, Zopiclone is being associated with dementia. Well, yeah, because people who have insomnia, who are prone to developing dementia, often take sleeping pills. It's like saying, metoprolol is associated with increased risk of cardiac mortality. Yeah, but it's not because of taking metoprolol. Okay. When we take a blood pressure medication, people with high blood pressure are at increased risk for cardiac mortality. And so when we treat it, it probably decreases their risk for cardiac mortality, but there's still those people who take metoprolol are at increased risk for cardiac mortality because of their underlying medical condition. So the association, people have made a mistake here, and that it's not the Zopiclone that increases risk of dementia, it's the underlying sleep deficiency. Okay. Now, try not to lose sleep up over that because that's only going to make your sleep worse. Okay. But so there are lots of things that you can do non-pharmacologically to optimize your sleep.
Yeah, I'd love for you to unpack that, because I think for many people, if they're struggling and it's, it's not just your garden variety, I only get 5-6 hours of sleep a night, but it's like struggling, like insomnia, can't fall asleep, can't stay asleep. Maybe one of the first inclinations is to take a sleep aid. So, and I know that you're quite passionate about trying to address these issues without using, a sleep aid. So maybe you can discuss like some of the strategies that people can try to implement in their lives.
Sure.
And maybe that's in conjunction with sleep aid. I don't know.
The medical literature shows that cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia works about 80% of the time for garden variety insomnia, which I'll describe in more detail in a moment. And so that it works better than Zopiclone. Okay, it takes longer to implement.
So it just means like adjusting behaviors.
So cognitive behavioral therapy involves a behavioral component, which is very important. In fact, 80% of those people who respond to CBT respond to the behavioral part alone.
Right.
So of about 80% of people who respond to, so that's 80% of 80%. Okay.
Right. Okay.
And the other 20% require the cognitive part. So the cognitive part, for example, if you have severe insomnia and you're tired during the day and it's hard for you to get through your day because you're struggling, it's harder to cope, it's harder to get things done, you're tired, and so somebody going to bed and dreading having a bad night and dreading what's going to happen to them the next day, that will make it harder for them to sleep.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I don't sleep tonight, I'm going to be a wreck tomorrow. And their worry about not sleeping tonight is guaranteeing them not having a good night. So they're catastrophizing. So we in cognitive therapy, we'll talk to them and say, well, look, how many times has it happened where you didn't sleep well and you function the next day? Well, I actually function remarkably well when I don't sleep. Yeah. And what is the chances that you won't tomorrow? Low. I'll probably function just as well as I did today. So do you really need to worry about this now? I mean, if you sleep good, great. If you don't sleep good, it's not going to be any worse than it was yesterday. So that's the cognitive part. And there's like 10 different categories that we can review. But normally I leave that up to the psychologist because as a family physician who doesn't get paid to do psychotherapy, I get paid my $33 whether I spend 5 minutes or an hour with the patient. I can't afford to do that. So I basically boiled it down to the behavioral part, and it turns out that that's, for most people, that's all you need to do.
So what are those things?
Okay, so let's step back for a moment and talk about the most common cause of insomnia. The most common cause of insomnia is called psychophysiologic insomnia. And psychophysiological insomnia implies that there are psychological and physiological factors that make it hard to sleep. And the physiological factors are sometimes obvious, like pain or hot flashes or restless legs. Sometimes they're not so obvious, like an underlying sleep disorder, like sleep apnea, leg twitching, sleep talking, things you wouldn't be aware of because you're asleep when they're happening. And that's why we do a sleep study. Okay, so we'll find out if something like that is going on. And if you're tired and you have to push yourself to get through your day, you're living on a lot of adrenaline. And so at the end of the day, that adrenaline hangover makes it harder to fall asleep. And even when you do sleep, if you go to sleep in fight or flight mode, you're not going to sleep very deeply. And then there's the circadian rhythm component to it as well. We live in a 24-hour world, but our biological clock is 24 hours and 15 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. And so you can imagine if you had a watch that was 15 minutes slow and you didn't reset it every day, in a week it would be on Hawaiian time. Mm-hmm. Okay. So your brain is releasing melatonin 15 minutes later. So you get biologically ready for sleep 15 minutes later. So you fall asleep 15 minutes later, and you want to get up 15 minutes later, and it just snowballs like that. So we need bright light first thing in the morning to reset our clock. Bright light within an hour of our normal wake time to reset our biological clock so it doesn't drift. So teenagers, sleeping in on weekends and on winter break and spring break and summer holidays, their clock can drift because of that thing. And so we can help them by making sure they get up within an hour of the normal wake time so their clock doesn't drift. So these are all physiological factors, but that is one of the common causes of insomnia in teenagers and young people. It's called delayed sleep phase, where their biological clock is on Hawaiian time. And when they try to go to bed they like to go to bed at midnight, but when they try and go to bed at 9 or 10 so they can get up for school the next day, they're not biologically sleepy yet. Yeah. So they have initial insomnia. And then when they wake up, when their parent wakes them up at 7 in the morning to get ready for school, it feels like 5 in the morning to them. So they don't want to get up. And so they're sleep deprived during the week. And then on the weekend, when they have a chance to sleep in, they sleep in and they start all over again with their clock delayed.
So yeah, I love that you're talking about teenagers, because I have two. And one of them is great. She pops out of bed in the morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. The other one, my son, is like the alarm can be going off at full volume, and he's out.
Yeah, what they call sleep inertia.
Yes, and he's also going to school right now in Toronto at U of T. Yeah, but he's back, and we're trying to help him. Students have terrible sleep habits, right? So he's just finished finals and up all night studying, and then he's, sleeping, trying to catch up here and there. But now there's this cycle where staying up super late and then can't get up in the morning. So is your advice get up in the morning and be in the light, or take the sleep you need?
No. What I would tell him, if he's having trouble falling asleep.
Yeah, just exactly what you said. Just not tired.
So, he's tired, but he's not sleepy.
Yeah.
And again, it's important to understand the difference. I get lots of patients being referred for excessive sleepiness, and they come in, they don't have sleepiness at all. They have insomnia and they're not tired. And the reason why, and because they can't, the same thing that keeps them awake during the day is keeping them awake at night. They're living in fight or flight mode, right? So even doctors don't understand the difference. So just to clarify, fatigue is where you don't have the energy to do something, but you're not necessarily falling asleep. Sleepiness is where you're struggling to stay awake. Okay. And they can coexist, but they don't always. Okay. So
we're looking for sleep.
So for him, does he have trouble falling asleep at night, or he just doesn't want to go to sleep at night? He wants to stay up later because he's got something he wants to do.
Oh, I think he has trouble falling asleep.
Okay. So So for him, I would tell him to go to bed when he normally gets sleepy. So instead of lying in bed for 2 hours struggling to sleep, reinforcing the bed as a place to be awake, practicing insomnia, as I put it, go to bed when you're normally biologically sleeping. So he normally doesn't fall asleep. It doesn't fall asleep until midnight. Go to bed at midnight. And you say, oh my God, he's not going to get enough sleep. And then get up at the time you need to get up and get your eyes open, get out into the light to reset your clock. Your biological clock can shift at the rate of an hour per day, a time zone per day.
Okay.
So within 2 or 3 days, unless he's really like on New York time, within 2 or 3 days, he should be able to get his clock in the right time zone, and then he can start going to sleep earlier and earlier until he's getting enough sleep to feel rested.
And
so back to psychophysiological insomnia, we talked about the physiological factors. The psychological factors, obviously, anxiety, depression can play a role.
stress.
But the most common psychological factor is not that, it's conditioning. So if you go through a period of time in your life where your sleep is significantly disturbed and it goes on long enough, you may become conditioned to sleep that way. And then it takes on a life of its own, even after the original factors that caused it are gone. The classic example is a mother has a baby and immediately learns to sleep with one ear open. And when that baby's old enough to leave home and go to university in Toronto, she's still sleeping with one ear open because she's become conditioned to be vigilant, for example. Or people become conditioned to worry or think or plan or problem solve or dread going to bed. It's a torture chamber for that. And so this is all about conditioning. We know how to change conditioning. Pavlov showed that to us over 100 years ago. And then, so the principles of the behavioral component of CBT is about conditioning. Now, it's important for people to understand that one of the most important things about conditioning something is consistency. Whether you're training children or training dogs or training yourself, you need to be consistent. If you're going through the checkout line at the grocery store with a child who's asking for candy and you say no 9 times out of 10, a stubborn child is going to ask you 10 times to get that one time you say yes. If you want to extinguish that behavior, you have to say no 10 times out of 10. So there's no value in asking that anymore. It doesn't get anything for it. And the other thing is that there's many different things that people can do to improve their sleep. And it's like a smorgasbord. And people looking at this is like overwhelming. Like, what do I do? Where do you get the most bang for your buck? After doing this for a couple of decades, I've kind of boiled it down to 4 what I call essential habits. So you probably drive a car that has 4 wheels, right? Does your car run? Does it work when you have only 3 wheels on it or 2 wheels on it? No. You have to have 4 wheels all the time consistently for it to work. So it's the same thing with the sleep program. I'll go over the sleep program with them. I'll spend extra 10 or 15 minutes making myself 10 or 15 minutes late for the next patient, explaining this to people, and they'll come back the next visit and say, well, how are you sleeping? Oh, it hasn't changed. Are you following the program? Yeah. And I go through the program with them. They're not following the program. So I tell them, you're not following the program. And they say, but I have a regular bedtime. I don't have caffeine afternoon and blah, blah, blah. But
so what's the program?
But weren't you doing that before you came to see me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you changed anything? No. Are you surprised that your sleep hasn't changed?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first habit is to make sure that you take at least an hour to relax and wind down before you go to bed. And this is to allow the adrenaline to wear off after pushing yourself through your day when you're tired or stressed. And this time is dedicated to just doing things you find relaxing and enjoyable, like reading, listening to pleasant music, doing some kind of hobby, craft, or puzzle, but you're not trying to accomplish anything.
Can you be on your phone playing Killing Fruit or something? No. Okay. I'm not allowed to do that. Okay.
No. So you're not trying to accomplish anything. You're not doing chores. You're not paying bills. You're not folding laundry. You're not cleaning the kitchen. Okay. You're just doing things you find relaxing and enjoyable. But no technology, no screens.
Okay, no screens.
Because screens are bright flashing lights. The brightness suppresses your melatonin, which delays your sleep onset. The flashing stimulates your brain. And even though people may fall asleep in front of the TV or computer, they don't sleep as well. Okay.
So TV also, not a good thing.
TV, computer, cell phones.
No.
I mean, have you ever woken up in the middle of the night and looked at your cell phone and just about blinded? It's bright.
Yes.
That brightness affects you physiologically.
Well, they're changing that though. So now you have dark mode.
I know.
It's still a light.
I think it's
still a light and it's still flashing. And it's a 60 hertz refresh rate. So you may not see it. It may look like a static screen, but it's still physiologically a flashing screen.
Right. So it's stimulating.
It's still on some level stimulating to the brain. Now, some people it has bigger effects than others. And for some people, it may not have a big effect. But if you're having trouble with your sleep, you're better off to do all 4 habits at once to get the results that you want. And then if you can get away with watching screens and still sleep good, then that's up to you later on. But if you don't do it and it doesn't work, okay, then you're wasting your time.
Okay, so first wheel on the car is an hour of chilling out.
Yes.
So read a book or, I don't know, listen to music.
Pet the fire.
Yeah.
Look at the moon.
Yeah.
Or do a puzzle.
I think everybody should read.
Reading for most people is the easy. It's sedentary. You can get a nice comfy chair with a nice little reading lamp and a blanket and enjoy your book and try not to fall asleep.
Okay, so everybody that's listening right now, you're gonna all go and get a book and you're gonna read for like an hour before you go to bed. Yeah. That's step one.
Some people with ADD and learning disabilities may find reading stressful. Okay, so they might want to listen to a podcast like this one. Okay. So this could become a thing that people can use to wind down. Okay.
That is such a great idea.
Even if they don't like listening to the visitor, okay, at least it might help them relax. Okay?
They could just play this podcast
That's
over
right.
and over again. So what's number 2?
So or they could listen to a book on tape.
Yes.
Okay. So there's other ways of doing this.
Yeah.
So number 2 is to set an alarm.
Okay.
So a lot of people
wake up in the morning.
Well, most people think the alarm is to wake you up, but that's not the real reason for the alarm. The real reason for the alarm is to help you sleep by taking away the responsibility of deciding when you're going to get up. So I see lots of people who are retired or have insomnia and wake up anyway. So I don't need an alarm. I wake up anyways. When you wake up, one of the reasons why you wake up is you're not using an alarm, and they get a funny look, and they give me this funny look. So
interesting.
The purpose of the alarm is to take away the responsibility of deciding when you're going to wake up. So what happens when you don't use an alarm is that every time you wake up, you have to decide whether you're going to get up or go back to sleep. And in the process of making that decision, you're gathering data about time. You're looking at the clock. And then you're processing data. You're calculating how much time you slept or how much time you have left to sleep. And then you're making decisions. Should I get up? Should I go to the bathroom? Should I try to go back to sleep? Should I check on the kids? Should I let out the dog? And this thinking is what ruins your sleep. Thinking is the enemy of sleep. You do not want to think at night. So you need to set an alarm so you don't think.
Okay, so you set an alarm. So
and you turn it away and you don't look at it until the alarm goes off the next day.
Get up the first time it goes off?
Yes.
Okay.
So you allow yourself.
No snoozing.
You can get snooze once. I don't mind.
I am that person that is having a full-on conversation with myself when the alarm goes off. How much time do I have? How can I snooze? I have 9 minutes. If I snooze, what is that going to do? I'm literally doing.
So what you need to do is invest in becoming a good sleeper so that when the alarm goes off, you feel like getting up. Okay. And a lot of people say, well, if I don't look at the alarm, then I worry about how much time I got left. So stop that. Okay. Because that's not helping you. See, you need to realize.
You like look at the clock.
Yeah, they say, well, looking at the clock, if I look at the clock at 2 a.m, it tells me I got 4 more hours of sleep. Then I can relax and go back to sleep. Yeah, but when it gets to 6 o'clock, now you can't get back to sleep because you're anticipating. I got to get up. I got to get up. And so what people do is people will tell me, well, I don't need an alarm. If I have to get up to go to the airport at 5 a.m, I wake up at 5 a.m. No, you don't. You wake up at 3, 3:30, 4, 4:30, 4:45, 4:46, 4:47. Oh, what the hell? I might as well get up. Yeah, sorry, you might have to bleep that out. Okay. And they don't realize that they're ruining the last hour or two of their sleep by being responsible for waking up. Okay. And so people need to realize that when they wake up in the night, they're not going to do anything differently based on knowing what time it is, other than ruin their sleep by thinking about it. Get over it. It doesn't matter.
Okay. So read a book, be chill, set an alarm, and turn your clock away from you so you don't see it.
Exactly.
And
don't even wonder about it. Okay? When you wake up in the night, don't even open your eyes. Because the only reason for opening your eyes is to gather data about your environment. You don't need to gather data. Okay? Your ears will tell you if there's anything going on in your room. Just turn over and go back to sleep.
My husband will ask me, like, I'm perimenopausal, so I get up in the middle of the night, go to the bathroom all the time. And he'll be like, what time is it? Because he's. And I'm always like, I don't care.
It's a bad habit. Yeah. It's a habit. And this is all about habits. This is totally about habits. So
what's number 3?
Third habit is to use a relaxation technique to help you fall asleep and to return to sleep. Okay? So a relaxation technique is something you do in your mind, eyes closed, lights off, with permission to fall asleep while you're doing it. Relaxation technique is not looking at your phone. It's not watching TV. It's not reading a book. Okay? Those are relaxing activities. Okay? So read a book to wind down.
That's the chill time.
Don't go to bed to wind down. You want to associate the bed with sleeping, not with being awake. Winding down is a wakeful activity. So do that before you go to bed to sleep, not to wind down. And so a relaxation technique, there's 3 common relaxation techniques. It might be breathing relaxation, focusing on breathing. It might be progressive muscle relaxation, where you work through the muscle groups of your body, tightening and relaxing them and allowing your body to relax. Or it might be imagery and visualization called autogenic relaxation. So, some people try them all and find out what works best for you. What do you like? When you do imagery, remember that you have 5 senses with which you can image.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just what it looks like, okay? You can imagine what it sounds like, what it smells like, what it tastes like, and most importantly, what it feels like. So what it looks like is to set the scene for what it feels like. So for example, if you like beaches, okay? If you can imagine lying on a beach on a warm summer day, and you can picture, the sky and the beach and the ocean, and if you can maybe hear the seagulls or the waves, or you can imagine you can smell the salty air, maybe you can imagine you can taste the ice cream cone. Mm-hmm. But also, can you imagine, that you can feel the warmth of the sun in your skin, mm-hmm. okay, or the breeze in your hair? If you can imagine you can feel the warmth of the sun of the skin, on your skin, the feeling of warmth is a very powerful, relaxing cue. Or if you can imagine you feel heavy, like you're creating an indentation in the sand with the weight of your body, the feeling of heaviness is also a very powerful, relaxing cue. Or if you can imagine your arm is so relaxed, it feels light, like it's almost floating. The feeling of lightness is also a very powerful, relaxing cue. So what it looks like, or what it sounds like, or what it tastes like is to set the scene for what it feels like. That's the most important part of the image. Right. So you have people doing imagery, and they're walking down the golf course and doing all that kind of stuff. It's not what it looks like.
It's what it feels like.
It's what it feels like. That's the most important part. Nice. And breathing relaxation. Well, people do what they call deep breathing. Well, deep breathing is hyperventilating, yes. And hyperventilating is alerting and arousing. You don't want to deep breathe. You want to slow breathe, okay? So people will start off with what they call box breathing. So they'll breathe in for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, breathe out for a count of 4, hold it out for a count of 2, and do this box breathing. And that's a really good way of learning how to relax with breathing. But it's also, you're also controlling your breathing, and the effort involved in controlling your breathing could keep you awake. So what I tell people to do is start off with, 3 or 4 box breaths, and then after that, stop controlling your breathing and just monitor your breathing after that. So when you notice as you breathe in, if you're breathing properly, you're breathing with your diaphragm, your tummy goes up. So if you have a hand on your tummy, you'll feel your tummy go up as you breathe in. As you breathe out, notice your tummy goes down. So you're just noticing this, in, out, up, down. You're not controlling anything. You might also notice that as you breathe in, the air is cool on the nostrils. And as you breathe out, you notice the air is warm. So in, out, up, down, cool, warm. And you're just noticing, you're not controlling it. You're just using this to distract your mind while you're waiting to fall asleep. Okay? Relaxation doesn't put you to sleep. All relaxation does is keep your mind out of the way while you're waiting for sleep to happen by itself. Staying awake is something you do. Relaxing and sleeping is something you allow. Mm-hmm. Okay? You can't make yourself sleep. You can't make yourself relax.
Right.
You have to allow yourself relax by getting out of the way. Okay?
I love it. So what's number 4?
So just before we go on to number 4, You need to do the relaxation technique every night, whether or not you're having trouble falling asleep. Because if you only do relaxation when you're having trouble falling asleep, you're going to learn to associate relaxation with trouble falling asleep. It's kind of like practicing self-defense, only when you're being mugged. You're not going to get very good at it. Whereas if you practice self-defense in self-defense class 3 nights a week for the next 3 months, and you develop the skills and the reflexes, when you need it, you just react. You don't think. You're being trained. Okay?
Right. Like you said, habits.
Exactly. Conditioned responses, reflexes. So that when you wake up in the night, remember, your body's still tired. It wants to sleep. It's your mind getting in the way. And if you do the relaxation again, turn your mind off, now you have a strategy to help you get back to sleep. The 4th habit, if you can't fall asleep within an estimated 20 minutes, and I say estimated because you're not looking at the time, you don't want to stay in bed struggling to sleep, reinforcing the bed as a place to be awake. So then you get out of bed, go into another room, do something relaxing until you feel sleepy, or until a half hour goes by, whatever comes first, because I don't want you staying out of bed for long periods of time either. And then you go back to bed and you do the relaxation technique again. Okay. And you just rinse and repeat till the alarm goes off.
Yeah. Okay. So that is an amazing, and I think pretty easy format for people to help themselves try to develop, like you said, these habits and practices that allow them to optimize their time in bed sleeping.
Exactly. Make it more efficient.
Yeah.
And you're right. It is easy, or sorry, it is simple. Wouldn't necessarily say it's easy.
Practice.
Yeah. So it's kind of like golf. All you have to do is hit that little ball into the little hole 18 times with a big stick. Seems simple, right? It's more difficult than it looks. But if you can practice your drive and practice your chip and practice your putt and you put it all together, you got a game. And you just practice those things until you can do it without thinking.
The game of sleep.
Game of sleep.
Everybody likes a good game. Gamify it. Awesome. We are almost out of time. This has been so interesting. I wish we had 2 hours. But I'm gonna switch gears a little bit, and I will wrap it up. But I'm curious. What keeps you awake at night?
Nothing very often, just episodically sometimes. Yeah. Things will happen that usually to do with stuff going on in our lives that aren't fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What areas of your life do you feel that you're wealthy? And by wealthy, I mean like our wealthy, you know, the healthy kind of wealthy.
Well, I'm very lucky that I have good health. It's probably not an accident because I've been living healthily.
Good sleep habits.
Well, lifestyle as well. You know, I see patients in my office who are 10 years younger than me and look 10 years older than me. And I'm very thankful that when I finish this visit, I'm going to go and play hockey.
Fun.
And so I'm very thankful for that. I'm also very thankful for lots of things, but my wife.
Your wife? What's your wife's name?
Elaine.
She's amazing.
It is so such a blessing to have a partner in life.
She's been with me through everything, our ups and downs, and amazing partner.
Awesome. And the last question is, and I'm pretty sure you have an answer for this because you seem like the kind of guy that thinks deeply about things. Is there a meditation or an intention? I don't say goal because that's not how my heart works. But what are you, like a meditation that keeps you grounded or on your feet, or what are you working towards?
Well, maybe I'm not as grounded as I should be.
But you know what? Our last guest actually said that was her meditation, was to be where her feet are.
The U.S. Army used to have this slogan, "Be all you can be." Mm. That's always been before I heard about it from the U.S. Army, that's always been what I want to be. and I'm still trying to be a better hockey player, a better husband, a better person, better race car driver. I like to race cars. I'm still trying to get better at everything I do, trying to get stronger, faster. I'm probably a little bit over the hill for that, but I'm still trying.
I love that. I'm also working with that intention. I think it's a great one. I think the desire to be better doesn't diminish who we are today, but keeps us excited and joyous about the possibilities that life offers.
Yeah.
Dr. Ron Cridland, where can people find you if they're interested in learning more?
Well, we have a website. It's called goodsleephealth.ca. We have a lot of information there about sleep and sleep health. And that also leads us to our website about our clinical side, what we offer at the Kelowna Sleep Clinic and the other sleep clinics that we have. So people can look us up there.
Amazing. Thank you. Your time is valuable and we appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.